In this series, I'm going to start with 3 Fire King structure decks at a budget of $25 a week to build a powerful, consistent, competitive, and most importantly, fun Yu-Gi-Oh deck. When the time is right, I'll take that deck to a regional, and then a YCS. The road won't be easy, but I know we can do it. Welcome to the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. What's potion? You got Matt here, and welcome back to the next episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. Last week we had our first upgrades to our Fire King deck, and if you missed it, pause this video, go and check it out. The video is in the cards right now. But even with all the new cards, we ended up taking a step backwards, losing every single one of our games last week. I know, it's not what we're looking to do, but it's okay. This week is exciting anyways because we once again get to upgrade our deck. We have a full budget of $25 to spend, plus a little bit left over from last time, and of course, we're going to use that to upgrade our deck. But first, if you're excited for the video and for the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge, then make sure to smash the like button. If this video hits 200 likes, then I'll bring you episode 4 next week. And make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the series and for more amazing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh videos. But with that being said, it's time for the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. Let's jump into it. So here we are back with the upgrades for this week, week number 3 of the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. I have quite a few different chains. We're actually adding in 10 different cards to our strategy today, which is funny because 3 cards in this strategy take up $23 of our $25.75 budget because we had 75 cents left over plus $25 from this week. But that being said, let's go and jump into it. Now, last week I mentioned there were a few different ways, or last episode I should say, there were a few different ways we can upgrade our deck. The first of which was going to be by adding inconsistency, which we did by getting Pot of Prosperity. We could have also gone down like Nindir Servant line, or even going with something like a more Tri-Brigade heavy build. We also could go with non-engine like Hand Traps and Board Breakers, and we definitely did add in quite a few different hand traps, including the Ash Blossoms and the DD Crows. We could have also upgraded the extra deck, which we did, but honestly, I think we kind of went the wrong way about it, considering that the plays we made last week were illegal, so that's my bad. And then I mentioned the long run. I think right here what I'm doing is I'm focusing very much on the short term for this specific build, but I also think that these cards have application in the long run. So what do we want to do? Well, we're going to focus heavily on our extra deck right now. Starting off, of course, with the, I should pull up my list here in terms of what I paid for everything. So we have our 1 copy of the Linkuriboh. We ended up paying $8 for this Linkuriboh. It is the common out of the structure deck, and it's really a pricey card. Before I left for vacation, it was like a $4 card, and now, or a $5 card. Now it's up to $8. We lost a big chunk of our budget based on when we actually bought the card. We also have next up our 1 copy of IP Masquerena, another fantastic card for the strategy. Again, pairing this card with something like a Sunlight Wolf is really nice because we can take advantage of multiple effects over the course of multiple turns. This was $5 out of our budget, so just these 2 alone is going to be $13. And then the most expensive card of the day is going to be the Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess. This is the one from Mavens. This one is $10. Originally, when I thought about what I want to do in planning this out, this card was sitting at like $6, but then eventually it just skyrocketed up there in terms of price, which is so disappointing because we lost out so much value just on these 2 cards here changing in value over the past few weeks. Now, that being said, this is going to be $23 of our $25.75 budget. We're basically using the rest of our budget right now. So what do we want to be filling that out with? Thankfully, we have access to the rarity collection, which gives us so much more cards that we can possibly add to our collection for a really low cost. So that being said, we added in a 1 copy of a Nightmare Unicorn, a Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, a Dingirsu Orchis of the Evening Star as our cards from the rarity collection. We also picked up a copy of Nightmare Phoenix and the 1 copy of a Common Abyss Dweller from the OTS packs. So what have we done here? Well, basically these 5 cards here, thanks to the rarity collection, cost us only 75 cents. Yeah, it's crazy how inexpensive these super rares are from the rarity collection, and even cards from Mavens like the Phoenix and of course the Abyss Dweller being a common OTS printing can be. So honestly, for what we're looking at here being $23.75, I'm pretty happy with this. It's a massive boost to our extra deck, which gives us so much more flexibility going into the rest of this format. So I'm pretty happy with this adjustment. We also then picked up 1 card for our main deck and 2 cards for our side deck. The 1 card for the main deck is going to be the 1-for-1. This card is sitting at about 50 cents right now, so we want to pick up this. It's a great way for us to get access to Ponix if we really need to. It gives us a bit more consistency, so I want to have it. And then we picked up not 1, but 2 copies of Dino Rustler Pankratops, freshly off the list to 2 copies, 75 cents per copy for the Dual Devastator versions here. Really happy with that. Honestly, this is going to be such a huge boost to our side deck right now. Just having a nice blowout against a few different strategies is really cool. That can get rid of some problematic floodgates, for example, and even just be a massive body as well. So that is going to be it for our upgrades for this week. We did pick up a few really nice cards last week that we got into our prizing, so I want to make sure we included that into the video. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into a very quick deck profile for what we're bringing to locals this time around. So starting off with the main deck, our main engine is going to be 3 copies of the legendary Fire King Ponix, being the best normal summon, the card we want to get access to in the strategy. 3 copies of Fire King High Avatar Kirin, 3 copies of the Sacred Fire King Garunix, as well as, unfortunately, I really don't want to have to do this, but I am going to for the time being, 3 copies of Fire King Avatar Arvada, and then the 1 copy of Rangbali and the 1 copy of Barong. Right now, our deck space, we're at 40 cards on the nose. Honestly, I didn't really want to play the Rangbali or this 3rd copy of the Arvada, but for the time being, because we don't have as many cards in the main deck that I really want to have access to, I felt like this was the best case to go with and adding more names to the strategy. That's going to be it for our Fire King monsters that we have. Moving on to our spell cards, we move on to 3 copies of Fire King Sanctuary, as well as 2 copies of Fire King Island. The reason why I decided to go with a 3-2 ratio instead of a 2-3 ratio was because Fire King Sanctuary inherently reduces our deck count size by 1 as long as we don't draw both copies of our Fire King Island. It also gives us the additional protection because Fire King Island, while it is going to be targeted to be destroyed by cards, we can protect it with Sanctuary, getting rid of that. I want to have access to that card to quickly seize on my opponent's turn and protect my island. We're also playing 2 copies of Fire King Skyburn. We are not playing the copy of the Circle this week. I don't find it super necessary in the main deck. We're then playing for consistency 3 copies of Tenki, as well as 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity, and then the 1 final 1-for-1 for our consistency pieces. Honestly, these are all pretty good. I'm really happy with the spell lineup right now. Ideally, we can make an adjustment. We kind of add additional engines to it, but for right now, this definitely gets the job done. Moving on, though, to our non-engine, we have 12 pieces of non-engine here, I believe. We have our 3 copies of Ash Blossom. We have our 3 copies of DD Crow. Now, obviously, when I added in DD Crow, tier limit was still a really big part of the format. I think Fire King is still going to be really solid to hit with DD Crow, but other than that, it kind of loses a lot of its luster, so it's just going to be a little bit iffy for now until we can replace it. We then, of course, have 3 copies of the Evenly Matched Shout Out to the Structure deck, as well as only 2 copies of DD Crow, or not DD Crow, Droll and Lockbird, and then the 1 Called by the Grave. Moving on, though, to our extra deck, we're rocking with, of course, the 1 copy of Link Karibo, with the 1 Almirage, our IP Masquerena, the Sunlight Wolf, and the Hita, the Nightmare Phoenix, and a Unicorn, as well as our Deco Talker Heatsoul, and our Magnetic City Avermax, and finally, for our last Link monster, our 1 copy of the Appaloosa. And as for our XCs, we have the 1 copy of Baguska, which we managed to pick up from our winnings from the Valiant Smashers pack, so I want to include this into the deck. We also have our Abyss Dweller as a rank 4. We have our Dingirsu here that we picked up today, and then, of course, 2 copies of the Garunix Eternity as our extra deck pieces. Moving on, though, to our copies of our side deck. And I do want to say quickly, it's crazy how much we've changed up our extra deck since we first got this structure deck. It's night and day in just 2 episodes, which is crazy to think of in terms of how less expensive these extra deck pieces, these more generic extra deck pieces are right now compared to what we've seen in the past. Obviously, that is not a blanket statement considering what we have right now in SP Little Knight and all the other cards like surrounding that, but still, these cards here are pretty inexpensive. Moving on, though, we have 3 copies of Solemn Judgment in our side deck. We're pairing that with 3 copies of Doveron the Mad Flame Kaiju just for emergencies. We have 2 copies of Dark Hole, as well as the 1 Fire King Circle. I just want to have this access to this in the deck in case I felt like I needed it, in case I was going up against a more grindier matchup, and I want to have another Search with Ponix and more Revival. This would definitely get me there. We also have 2 copies of the Alpha Master of Beasts from the structure deck. As I'm noticing, I'm really not even with my distribution here, but hey, it is what it is. And then we have, of course, 2 copies of Dino Wrestler Pankratops, the 3rd Droll and Lockbird in the side here, and then the 1 Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood, which is here because we managed to pull it from Valiant Smashers. And honestly, I'm happy to have access to this in the series. But yeah, that is going to be what our deck is looking like for today's locals. I'm feeling pretty good about our chances today. The extra deck is looking nice. I'm getting more comfortable with the strategy, and it's our first time playing Fire King with the new ban list. So because of the new ban list, I'm not too worried about seeing Tearlament or Unchained, which are 2 of the hardest matches for Fire King in the previous format. Now, a lot of you were asking why was there such a big delay between episode 2 and episode 3, and honestly, my footage for episode 3 got corrupted before I went on vacation, and there was no way I could get out a new episode for you guys before I ended up leaving. But I guess it was for the best. I ended up getting some really cool footage for B-roll, and instead of spending the holidays in the cold, I was able to get some much needed sun before heading to locals for this week's duels. All right, we're here at locals. We have our entry packs. We have 1 Duelist Nexus and 1 Grand Creators because we are running low on packs right now. Can we get something nice? I got a Secret Rare Dark Corridor. We will take it. That is amazing trade bait. Wow, that is a huge start. I believe that's like $15 or something right now. Canadian, maybe bro, like.
I'll give you $3 for it.
No, not happening. Not happening. Grand Creators, what do we get? I'm hoping for Solemn Strike here, or maybe like a QCR. Insect or nothing, and
Oh,
then a
shit.
bunch
Okay.
more.
Nothing.
I mean, Psychic Tracker's a level 3 extender in case we go that route, but honestly, Dark Corridor, wow, this is awesome. Okay, well, cool. That is a win at locals for sure.
If you reseal the packs right now, I'll give you $3 for both.
So round 1 of locals, I played against one of the young dragon duelists that comes to the shop, and because he's not old enough to give consent to be on the channel, I won't be showing any of that gameplay. But we did take the win mostly on the back of our non-engine. It was able to interact well against his dragon pile deck. As for round 2, this is the feature match for today's video. We're up against Milan, who I believe is his first time being featured on the channel. We lose the dice roll and he decides to go first while playing Horus Orchist. Our opening hand really isn't that impressive. We have 2 Ash Blossoms and an Imperm, and 2 Tenki going second. Hopefully the 2 interruptions and our draw for turn are enough for us to pop off. But he has the God Hand. He starts by special summoning Fenrir and activates Imseti, sending the newly limited Harp Horde to the graveyard. I can't let him get access to King Sarcophagus or he'll just get too much advantage, so I ash him here, which was a huge mistake because he then does this.
You ashed the wrong thing, bucko! Let's go!
Oh my god, of course he has
Welcome to the ocean, folks.
Shit. So yeah, it's not looking good. I'm down one of my most impactful cards already and I have nothing to show for it. And then to make matters worse, he activates Talons to look at my hand, and here I'm forced to use Imperm or I lose it. So I Imperm the Fenrir to stop him from getting an extra card to his hand to discard. He then shuffles back the Ash Blossom. So his hand was Fenrir, Imseti, Harp Horror, Talons, and King Sarcophagus. We need a miracle to win this one. He then proceeds to activate Harp Horror, summoning Girsu, using Girsu's effect to Foolish Burial the Orcus Nightmare from deck. He then brings back Imseti and links it off into Galatea and shuffles back the Harp Horror to set and activate Babel. Orcus Nightmare sends Symbol Skeleton, and Symbol Skeleton summons back Girsu. He then overlays Dingirsu onto Galatea and then uses the effect to attach Skeleton to it before linking off Girsu and Dingirsu into IP Masquerena to create what he describes as the best end board of 2019 and passes turn. Well, I Tenki to get Arvada, and then I just scoop. I actually didn't feel too bad about this game if I had opened up with any fire monster on my draw for turn there. I could have used Arvada to start forcing disruptions and then pop my own cards to gain advantage, but I think the biggest misplay was ashing the Imseti, which is interesting because usually that's what you want to ash. But in this case, if I end up saving the ash for the Harp, he has no way of getting into his Orcus plays unless he draws into another Orcus. Obviously, I don't know that in the moment, but let me know, what do you think, and would you have played this turn any differently? Game 2, I'm going first, and I side in 3 copies of Solemn Judgment for my 2 main deck Drolls and the Rang Valley. I draw 5 cards and my hand is Arvada, Barong, Kirin, Judgment, and Judgment. It's interesting alright, but I should have 3 interruptions, which is pretty nice. So I normal summon Arvada, use Kirin's effect to destroy my Barong, and I set 2 Judgments and pass turn. In standby phase, my Barong adds a Garunix from deck to hand. Milan then sets 2 back row in the same column as my back row, so I'm pretty confident that these 2 cards are Imperms and he passes turn. I draw for turn, enter battle phase, and swing for 4200, and I set another card and pass. He draws into Reinforcement of the Army, which turns on his entire engine, and I don't feel the need to negate it because I have the 2 Judgments set. He adds Dark Grepher, which does not activate to summon. He then summons it by discarding Orcus Nightmare, and so he doesn't get any more advantage, I decide to Judgment the summon. He then Imperms, targeting my Arvada in my other Judgment column, so I have no choice but to Judgment his Imperm, or else both the Judgment and the Arvada are lost for the turn, and what does he do? He Imperms the Arvada anyways with his other set and proceeds to try to go through full Orcus combo. He sends Harp off of Nightmare and summons Girsu off of Harp and attempts to Foolish Burial here, but we have the Imperm and force him to pass turn here. I draw for turn, go directly to battle phase, crash Arvada into Girsu, trigger Garunix in hand and Arvada in graveyard to get 2 more bodies on the field, and swing in for lethal. So we're on to game 3 and we have about 30 minutes left on the clock. I side out the 3 Judgments, a Garunix, a Sanctuary, and a Tenki, and I add in 2 Pankratops, 2 Dogoron, and 2 Dark Hole. Milan goes first, normal summoning Girsu and sending Harp and giving us each a token. He then links into Linkuriboh and uses Harp to summon Orcus Nightmare, and then he sends it to the graveyard for Orchestrated Return and draws 2 cards. Orcus Nightmare targets the Galatea to send Symbol Skeleton to the graveyard. Symbol Skeleton then revives the Girsu, and then he overlays Dingirsu on top of Galatea and attaches the banished Symbol Skeleton, and he links into IP again. Then, in a turn of events, he uses Imseti, sending Ash Blossom, and I have no response, so he gets the King Sarcophagus and draws again. Then he drops Rhoda for Armageddon Knight and passes turn with 5 cards in hand, including a King Sarcophagus and an Armageddon Knight that I know. I draw for turn and I activate Sanctuary to get me Island, and I normal summon Barong. I know I can't OTK him this turn, but I should be able to turn off his interruptions before I activate my copy of Island. So I go to battle phase and I attack into IP. On attack declaration, he activates Symbol Skeleton, targeting Dingirsu. But I have the one of Called by the Grave to banish the Dingirsu, and I can continue to beat over the IP Masquerena. In main phase 2, I attempt to activate Island, but he has the Ash Blossom for it. That's okay though, because I activate Skyburn, destroy my Barong and the Babel as well, which goes through, and on resolution I have Garunix in my hand to summon and destroy a fire. I choose Kieran in my deck, which lets me summon out a copy of Ponix from my hand. Ponix then adds the second copy of Skyburn from my deck to my hand. But Skyburn is now the only card in my hand, so I need to replenish my resources. I link Garunix and Ponix for Sunlight Wolf and link the Gearsu's token for Linkuriboh. I trigger Sunlight Wolf to add back Kieran and link the Sunlight Wolf and Linkuriboh for Heat Soul. I pay 1,000 and draw a card, setting Skyburn and passing the turn. In draw phase, I activate Heat Soul to get another card, and in standby phase, Barong adds me Arvada from the deck. Do you want to know what my 2 draws from Heat Soul were? Ankratops and Dogoron. Yeah, just perfect. On the bright side, I don't think he's finding lethal here. In main phase, Milan activates King Sarcophagus, sending Armageddon Knight for cost to send Happy. On resolution, I activate Kieran, destroying my Arvada in hand. In a new chain, I have Chainlink 1 Arvada targeting Barong, and Chainlink 2 Garunix to summon itself. On resolution, I have Garunix's effect to destroy my Kieran in deck, which I will then use to special back the Arvada and destroy the King Sarcophagus so he can't summon back the Horus cards. He now has 3 cards in hand and then uses triple tactic talents to take my Arvada, so I'm quickly running out of interruptions. It's exclusively Sanctuary and Skyburn, that's all I have left. He then activates the second King Sarcophagus from his hand, and now I'm forced to do something. I activate Skyburn, destroying my Barong and Garunix to destroy Arvada and King Sarcophagus. He has 1 card in hand, no relevant Orcus cards in graveyard, and he would have to discard his last card to get Babel back. But what does he do? He normal summons Gearsu. This deck has been all gas for him except game 2, but anyways, he sends World Want to the graveyard and gives us both tokens. Linkuriboh then summons itself by tributing the token, and World Want banishes itself to summon back the Nightmare. He then links the Nightmare and the Linkuriboh for Dark, which takes my Linkuriboh and links Gearsu and my Linkuriboh for Galatea. Galatea shuffles back the Symbol Skeleton for Crescendo. He then uses Nightmare on Galatea, sending Harp, and Harp Horror summons Symbol Skeleton from the deck. He then links Galatea, Symbol Skeleton, and Dark for Boral Sword Dragon, and then uses Symbol Skeleton to summon back Galatea and overlay into Typhon. I know, that wasn't legal. Galatea doesn't have the highest attack on the field, we both missed it, but it doesn't impact the game at all, and I'll explain why at the end of the turn. He uses Typhon to get rid of the token and goes to battle phase and attacks Boral Sword into Kieran, attempting to use the effect.
I'll go battle phase. Effect.
You cannot activate the effect. Typhon. So Typhon prevents both players from using the effects of monsters with 3,000 or more attack. He still clears my board and I take 1,200 from this battle, and he passes turn there. Before I go any further, we all misplay, we all forget to read cards sometimes, and this time it cost Milan a good shot at putting me in a really tough spot. But it's also on me for not remembering that Typhon needs the highest attack monster for its summon. So here's why it didn't matter. Let's say he still has his Galatea on field and no Orcus effects that can be activated in the graveyard the rest of the turn, but he still has his Crescendo set. He can still clear my board by attacking Galatea into the token, Boral Sword into the Kieran, using its effect to put it to defense, and then Boral Sword into Heat Soul. I would have taken 3,000 life points here and he would have had 1 more negate with Crescendo, but remember I drew a Kaiju and Pankratops off of Heat Soul. So I can just shut off the negate if necessary, and then the duel would proceed the same way. Anyways, continuing with the duel, I draw for turn an Ash Blossom, which would have been so nice to see last turn, but it is what it is. In standby phase, Barong searches for Arvada. I special summon Pankratops, using Island to destroy my Arvada to add Ponix. Chainlink 1 Arvada targeting Kieran, and Garunix as Chainlink 2. Garunix destroys my Kieran in deck, and in a new chain I have Chainlink 1 Kieran, Chainlink 2 Ponix. Kieran summons back Arvada and destroys the Boral Sword. I attack Garunix over Typhon since it gains half the attack of the Kieran destroyed, inflicting another 1,000 life points, then Pankratops, Kieran, Arvada, and Ponix combine for lethal. This was such a crazy game that could have honestly gone completely different if I didn't have Call by the Grave exactly. If it was DD Crow, he could have summoned Dingirsu on his second turn and then used it to get rid of cards and swing for game. But thankfully, Call by the Grave clutched it up for us. Round 3, we're up against Jens on Fire King, but he's actually playing a super interesting list that he developed, which includes the Infernoid cards. The best name for the deck is Sinfernoid Fire King for the Sinful Spoils Infernoid Fire King combination. It's game 3 and we're getting close to time being called, and I decide to let him go first. My interruptions are a Droll and Lockbird and a DD Crow. Droll would be great unless he opens up with Sanctuary, in which case it wouldn't matter. Thankfully, he opened up with a lot of going second cards, so my strategy to make him go first worked. He uses Kieran to destroy Barong to trigger its effect in the standby phase, sets 1 and passes turn. In my draw phase, I crow the Barong, but I have to remember to do that in the end phase next time in case a set card is a Called by the Grave. Anyways, I use Tenki and search for Arvada. I then normal summon Ponix to get Sanctuary, and he ashes me here. Ashing here was a little bit surprising, but it ends up working out for him. I go to battle phase and crash the Ponix into the Kieran, and I take 1,900 damage, and then I have Garunix in hand to trigger, which can activate its other effects in the damage step. This gives me enough bodies on the field to get the life point lead. I set a bluff Tenki in the Imperm column to make him wonder if it's my own copy of Imperm and pass the turn. As we're getting really close to time being called, he draws Ponix and normal summons it, activating the effect. I attempt to Arvada, he imperms the Arvada and gets his Sanctuary, and on resolution, I use Droll and Lockbird, and because of that Droll and Lockbird, I get the win. Unfortunately, our locals isn't always able to do a 4th round on Thursday nights, which is the case today, but that means we went 3-0, undefeated, good enough for first place at locals, which is the first time we're getting first place with our budget deck. I was so happy when it was revealed that we came in first place. Not only do we get $15 of store credit to add to our store credit budget, making it now $20, but we also just proved that even on a budget, you can perform well at locals. So for all of you joining me on this series, either by watching the videos or by taking part in your own budget challenge, this is just the beginning. We're gonna keep on climbing. Also, our updated overall records are now on screen. We're 6 wins and 3 losses in matches, and we are 12 wins and 9 losses in games. So this was a pretty good week for us. Not only did we finish in first place, but we pulled Dark Corridor, which is great trade bait or amazing for us to sell as well. And we have so much flexibility for what our strategy can do. And of course, we also added in $15 to our budget of store credits. Speaking of store credit, last week I asked you guys what I should do with the store credit we get from winning any weeks at locals, and I asked you guys, should we decide to put it to our regular budget, should we just disregard it completely, or should we add it to a separate category that's used exclusively for sealed product in the store? And that's what I decided to do. So what we're going to have now is 2 different counters. One is going to have our weekly budget that we have in terms of cash that we can use for anything, and the second one will be for store credit exclusively, and this can be used only on sealed product, because honestly, that's what the series here is missing. I want to add some sealed product, but I want the series to also be replicable for everyone that wants to follow along, and sealed product doesn't necessarily allow us to get that chance. Also, starting next week, I'm going to be changing my upload schedule. Instead of doing 3 videos a week, you're going to be getting 4 from me. One on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'm also going to give you guys a live stream right here on YouTube on Friday afternoons. I've also set up YouTube channel memberships. If you want to go above and beyond and support the channel even more, then you can go ahead and click on the join button to learn more. By becoming a member, you'll get access to exclusive badges and emotes, as well as when the Discord server becomes public in the next few weeks, you'll get access to exclusive members only channels there too. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh Budget Challenge. If you enjoyed the video, then do me a favor and smash the like button. If we hit 200 likes on the video, then I'll make sure to bring you guys episode 4 next week. Also, leave me a comment down below if you have any suggestions on what we should do to improve the deck from here. And of course, subscribe to the channel as well. We are on the road to 7,500 subscribers and we cannot get there without your help. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.